The autumn rain had just stopped when 16-year-old Maya Chun wheeled herself through the front doors of Riverside High. The wet pavement reflected the gray sky, and puddles dotted the walkway like scattered mirrors. Maya had learned to navigate this path carefully. Too fast and the wheels would spray water onto her clothes. Too slow and she'd be late for first period. Again, she pushed forward with practiced efficiency, her arms strong from years of maneuvering through a world built for people who could walk. Inside, the hallways buzzed with the familiar chaos of morning arrival. Lockers clanged, sneakers squeaked on linoleum, and clusters of students laughed and gossiped. Maya kept her eyes forward, aiming for the accessible elevator at the far end of the building. It was a route she'd memorized, a path designed to avoid certain territories. But today, her usual timing was off. As she rounded the corner near the science wing, she saw them. 3 figures blocking the hallway ahead, their backs to her, their voices carrying that particular tone that made her stomach tighten. Tyler Beck stood in the center, tall and athletic, wearing his varsity basketball hoodie like armor. To his left was Connor Hayes, whose family owned half the commercial real estate downtown. On the right, Ashton Park, quiet but always present, always watching. They weren't doing anything obviously wrong, just standing there, talking, existing in a way that took up all the space. Maya slowed her wheelchair, calculating. She could turn around, take the long way through the cafeteria, but that would definitely make her late. She could ask them to move, but experience had taught her that requests could become opportunities for humiliation. Or she could wait, hope they'd disperse naturally. She chose to wait, positioning herself near a classroom door, trying to look like she belonged there, like she was waiting for someone. Minutes ticked by. The first bell rang, sending most students scrambling toward their classes. But Tyler's group remained, their conversation shifting to highlights from last night's game, their voices casual and unhurried. Maya checked her phone. 3 minutes until she'd be officially late. Mrs. Patterson didn't accept excuses, especially not from students she considered given special accommodations already. Maya took a breath and pushed forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady but not loud. "I need to get through." Tyler turned slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to something harder to read. "Oh, hey, Maya. Didn't see you there." His tone was friendly, but his feet didn't move. Connor smirked. "You're always in such a hurry. What's the rush?" Maya kept her composure. "Class starts in 2 minutes. I just need to get past." Ashton finally stepped aside, creating a narrow gap. Maya angled her wheelchair toward it, but as she tried to pass, Tyler shifted slightly, his backpack swinging out just enough to block her path. It could have been accidental. It probably was accidental. But it happened again when she tried the other side. "Sorry," Tyler said, not sounding sorry at all. "I'm just clumsy today." Students walked past, their eyes sliding over the scene without stopping. Nobody wanted to get involved. Maya felt the familiar heat rising in her chest. Not quite anger, not quite shame, something between the two. "Please move," she said, and this time her voice carried an edge. Tyler's smile faded. "You know, Maya, you could try asking nicer. We're not your servants." The second bell rang. Maya was officially late. In Mrs. Patterson's class, that meant detention. In her father's house, that meant a lecture about responsibility and not using her disability as a crutch. Tyler and his friends finally moved, stepping aside with exaggerated courtesy, Tyler even giving a mock bow. Maya pushed past them, her jaw tight, her eyes stinging. She heard Connor's voice behind her, not quite whispered. "She's so sensitive." We were just standing there. By the time Maya reached Mrs. Patterson's chemistry class, her carefully maintained composure had cracked. The teacher looked up from her desk, her expression already disapproving. "Miss Chun, that's the 3rd time this month. Maya opened her mouth to explain, then closed it. What was the point? She took her assigned seat at the accessible lab table, isolated at the front of the room where she could see better, and tried to focus on the lesson about molecular bonds. But her mind kept replaying the hallway scene, turning it over, examining it for what she could have done differently. At lunch, Maya sat with the few friends she'd managed to keep: Jasmine Rodriguez, who'd been her partner in a P English since freshman year, and David Kim, who shared her passion for debate club. They sat at their usual table near the windows, far from the cafeteria's social epicenter. "You okay?" Jasmine asked, her dark eyes concerned. "You've been quiet." Maya pushed her sandwich around her plate. "Just Tyler and his crew being Tyler and his crew." David scowled. "What did they do this time?" She shrugged. "Nothing specific. Everything general. You know how it is." But Jasmine leaned forward. "We don't know unless you tell us." "What happened?" So Maya told them about the hallway, about being late, about the mocking bow, and the comment about being sensitive. As she spoke, she watched their faces shift from concern to anger to something worse: helpless frustration. "You should report them," David said firmly. "That's harassment." Maya shook her head. "Report them for what? Standing in a hallway? Being slow to move? There's no proof, no witnesses who'd speak up, and even if there were, what would happen? They'd get a talking to. I'd get labeled a snitch, and it would get worse." Jasmine bit her lip. "It shouldn't be like this. You shouldn't have to put up with this." But they all knew she was right. The social dynamics of Riverside High were complex and unforgiving. Tyler Beck wasn't just some random bully. He was basketball royalty, his father a former NBA player who donated generously to the school. Connor Hayes' family had their name on the new gymnasium. Ashton Park was quiet, but his older brother had been student body president. They had protection, connections, the kind of untouchable status that came from being on the right side of the school's invisible power structure. Maya, on the other hand, was vulnerable in ways that went beyond her wheelchair. She was one of only a handful of black students at Riverside, adopted by white parents who loved her, but didn't always understand the particular challenges she faced. She was smart, too smart, some said, and that made her a target for those who confused academic success with arrogance. And she was disabled, which in the eyes of many students made her simultaneously invisible and hypervisible, ignored until her presence became inconvenient. The afternoon brought more small humiliations. In the bathroom, the accessible stall was out of order again, though Maya suspected someone had just taped the sign there as a joke. In gym class, which she took as an adaptive PE course, Tyler's basketball practice ran over into her scheduled pool time, forcing her group to wait in the cold hallway. Each incident was minor, deniable, the kind of thing that could be explained away as coincidence or accident. But Maya knew better. This was the slow drip of casual cruelty, designed to remind her daily that she didn't quite belong. After school, Maya waited by the pickup circle for her mother's van, the one with the ramp and special controls. Most days, this was the worst part: sitting exposed while streams of students walked past, got into their own cars, headed to practice or work or friends' houses. Normal teenager things. Today, Tyler and Connor walked past, gym bags slung over their shoulders. Tyler paused, looking down at her with something that might have been genuine curiosity. "Hey, Maya, can I ask you something?" She tensed. "What? Does it ever get old?" "Playing the victim card, I mean. Like, is it exhausting, or do you kind of enjoy the attention?" The question hit like a physical blow. Maya stared at him, searching for words, but her throat had closed. Connor laughed. "Dude, that's harsh." Tyler shrugged. "I'm just asking. She always acts like everyone's out to get her. Maybe if she was friendlier, people would be nicer. shaking. When her mother arrived 5 minutes later, full of cheerful questions about her day, Maya couldn't answer. She just shook her head and stared out the window as they drove home. That night, lying in bed, Maya made a decision. She couldn't keep living like this, swallowing humiliation, pretending everything was fine. But she also couldn't follow David's advice and report Tyler. That would only make things worse. She needed a different strategy, something smarter. She pulled out her phone and started researching disability rights, discrimination laws, school policies. She read until her eyes burned, taking notes, building a case in her mind. If they wanted to paint her as weak, as a victim, she'd prove them wrong. She'd find her power in the places they least expected. The next morning, Maya arrived at school early, before most students. She went straight to the main office and asked to speak with Principal Morrison. The secretary, Mrs. Wallace, looked surprised but sympathetic. "He's preparing for a morning meeting, dear." "Can it wait?" Maya shook her head. "It's important. It's about accessibility issues that are affecting my education." The magic words: accessibility, education, legal territory. Mrs. Wallace picked up the phone, and 5 minutes later, Maya was wheeling into Principal Morrison's office. He was a tired-looking man in his 50s, with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Maya, right? What can I do for you?" Maya had prepared her speech carefully. She didn't mention Tyler by name. She didn't talk about bullying or harassment. Instead, she focused on facts. The elevator that frequently broke down, the accessible bathroom that was constantly out of order, the scheduling conflicts that forced her to miss class time, the lack of proper lab table space in chemistry, the narrow doorways in the older building wing. She spoke calmly, professionally, like someone presenting a business case. "These aren't just inconveniences, Mr. Morrison. They're violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act. My parents have been patient, hoping the school would address these issues voluntarily. But we're now prepared to file a formal complaint with the Office for Civil Rights unless substantial improvements are made." She watched his face pale. "Now, Maya, I'm sure we can work this out without involving—" "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Maya interrupted. "I'm trying to get an equal education. That's all. But I need your commitment that these issues will be addressed immediately." Principal Morrison scrambled for his legal pad. Of course. Let me take notes. Tell me again about the elevator." Maya spent the next 20 minutes detailing every accessibility barrier she documented over the past year. By the time she finished, Morrison looked like he needed an aspirin. "I'll form a task force," he promised. "We'll conduct a full accessibility audit. This is clearly unacceptable." Maya nodded. "Thank you. I'd like weekly updates on the progress." As she left his office, she felt something she hadn't felt in months: power. Not the power to hurt anyone, but the power to protect herself. The power that came from knowing the rules better than those who were supposed to enforce them. Word spread quickly. By third period, everyone knew Maya-chan had gone to the principal about accessibility stuff. The reactions were mixed. Some students seemed impressed, even supportive. Others rolled their eyes, confirming Tyler's narrative about her playing the victim. But in the hallway before lunch, Tyler cornered her near her locker. "Heard you had a nice chat with Morrison this morning." His voice was flat, controlled. Maya met his eyes. "I discussed some concerns about school facilities. It didn't involve you." "Everything involves everyone in a school this size," Connor said, appearing beside Tyler. "You make waves. We all feel them." Ashton hung back, watching silently. Tyler stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You think you're smart, going to the principal with your legal threats. But you know what that makes you? A narc. Nobody likes a narc, Maya. You just made your life a lot harder." Maya felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm just asking for what I'm legally entitled to." If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe ask yourself why. For a moment, something flickered in Tyler's expression: surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. But it vanished quickly, replaced by a cold smile. Whatever helps you sleep at night. They walked away, but Maya noticed Ashton glance back at her, his expression unreadable. Over the next week, the atmosphere shifted. Principal Morrison's promised task force materialized, conducting inspections, interviewing staff, measuring doorways. Workers appeared to fix the elevator, repair the bathroom stall, adjust the lab tables. Each change was small, but together they represented something larger: accountability. But Maya paid a price. Students who'd previously ignored her now actively avoided her. Rumors circulated that she'd threatened to sue the school, that her parents were demanding hundreds of thousands in damages, that she'd gotten teachers in trouble. None of it was true, but truth was irrelevant in the ecosystem of high school gossip. Jasmine and David stuck by her, but even their support came with tension. "Are you sure this is worth it?" Jasmine asked one afternoon. "People are turning on you." Maya nodded. "I know. But if I don't stand up for myself, who will? And maybe this makes it easier for the next disabled kid who comes here." The real escalation came on a Friday afternoon. Maya had stayed late for debate club practice, and when she came out, the parking lot was nearly empty. Her mother was running late, stuck in traffic. Maya decided to wait inside, near the front doors where it was warm. As she turned her wheelchair around, she heard voices from the gym hallway: Tyler and Connor, their words echoing off the lockers. "Sick of her attitude," Connor was saying. "Like she's better than everyone because she's got a disability and good grades." Tyler's response was quieter, but Maya caught the words. Someone needs to knock her down a few notches. Remind her where she stands. Maya's breath caught. She should leave, she knew. This wasn't a conversation meant for her ears. But she stayed frozen, listening. "We could spread more rumors," Connor suggested. "Make her look bad. Get people to exclude her completely." "Too slow," Tyler said. "And too risky with her parents watching everything now. We need something that looks like an accident. Something that can't be traced back to us." Maya's hands tightened on her wheels. Were they actually planning something, or was this just teenage posturing? The line was uncomfortably blurry. Ashton's voice joined in, tentative. "Maybe we should just leave her alone. She's not worth the trouble." "That's exactly the problem," Tyler shot back. "Everyone's too scared to deal with her now. She thinks she's untouchable. We need to show her she's not." Maya made her decision. She pulled out her phone, opened the voice recorder app, and started recording. Then she wheeled herself closer, just around the corner, where she could hear more clearly. For the next 5 minutes, she captured their conversation. The specific plans Tyler outlined, Connor's enthusiastic agreement, Ashton's weak protests. They talked about sabotaging her wheelchair, about staging an incident that would humiliate her publicly, about getting other students to join in a coordinated exclusion campaign. When she heard them wrapping up, Maya quickly wheeled back to the front entrance. Her heart was pounding, her hands shaking. But she had evidence now. Real, undeniable evidence. Her mother arrived 10 minutes later, apologizing profusely for the delay. Maya said nothing during the ride home, her mind racing. That night, she listened to the recording 3 times, making sure it was clear, that the voices were identifiable. Then she made copies, one to her cloud storage, one to a flash drive, one emailed to herself. The next morning was Saturday, but Maya didn't rest. She drafted a detailed email to Principal Morrison, outlining what she'd overheard and attaching the audio file. She explained that she wasn't seeking punishment necessarily, but she wanted the school to take the threat seriously and ensure her safety. She copied her parents on the email, which led to an intense family discussion. Her father, Richard Chun, was a corporate lawyer who understood the implications immediately. "This is serious, Maya. If they're planning to harm you, we need to involve the police." Her mother, Linda, was more hesitant. "But what if it was just talk? Boys that age say stupid things. Do we want to ruin their lives over words?" Maya felt frustration rising. "They were planning to sabotage my wheelchair, Mom, to hurt me. How is that just talk?" Richard put a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother has a point about proportionality, but so do you about safety. Let's see how the school responds first. If they don't take it seriously, we escalate." By Monday morning, the response was swift and severe. Tyler, Connor, and Ashton were called into emergency meetings with the principal and their parents. The audio recording was played. School security was notified. By lunchtime, Tyler and Connor were suspended pending a full investigation. Ashton received a warning and mandatory counseling. The school buzzed with speculation. Some students were shocked, others skeptical. A vocal group insisted Maya had fabricated the recording or taken their words out of context. Tyler's father, a former NBA player, hired a lawyer and began making noise about invasion of privacy and entrapment. The divide in the school community grew sharper. Maya became a polarizing figure to some, a brave advocate standing up to bullies. To others, a manipulative troublemaker who'd gone too far. Death threats appeared in her locker, crude drawings of wheelchairs being pushed off cliffs. Anonymous social media accounts sprang up, posting edited photos of her with cruel captions. The school's administration was overwhelmed, scrambling to contain the situation. Principal Morrison called an emergency assembly to address bullying, discrimination, and the importance of inclusivity. The speech was well-intentioned but tone-deaf, full of platitudes about respect and kindness that rang hollow to students who knew the full story. In the back of the auditorium, Maya sat with Jasmine and David, feeling more isolated than ever. After the assembly, as students filed out, Maya found herself surrounded by a group she didn't recognize: older students. Juniors and seniors, their faces serious. For a moment, she panicked, thinking this was an ambush. But the girl in front, a tall senior named Alyssa Rodriguez, held up her hands peacefully. "We're not here to mess with you," Alyssa said. "We wanted to say we've got your back." Maya looked around at the circle of faces, a diverse group, including several students she recognized from various clubs and sports teams. "Why?" she asked simply. A junior named Marcus Washington stepped forward. "Because I got tired of watching the same people get away with the same crap year after year. Tyler and his crew have been bullying people since freshman year. You're just the first person to actually do something about it." Another student, a quiet girl named Emma Lou, added, "My brother has autism. The things people say to him, the way they treat him, it's not right. If you can stand up to them, maybe others can too." Over the next few days, this impromptu alliance grew. Students began sharing their own stories of being bullied, excluded, or harassed. A sophomore came forward with evidence of Tyler selling stolen exam answers. A freshman reported that Connor had been pressuring younger students for money, calling it lunch insurance. The investigation expanded beyond the initial incident, revealing a pattern of behavior that the administration had either missed or ignored. Tyler's father's lawyer couldn't explain away multiple testimonies from different students across different years. The case grew too big to dismiss. Maya watched this unfold with mixed feelings. She'd wanted to protect herself, to stop the daily humiliations. She hadn't intended to bring down an entire social structure. But as more stories emerged, she realized her situation wasn't unique. It was just the most visible. Riverside High had a bullying problem that went far deeper than one disabled student being targeted. 2 weeks after the initial suspension, Tyler and Connor were expelled. The decision came from the school board after reviewing all the evidence, including testimony from dozens of students. Ashton was allowed to remain but was removed from all leadership positions and placed on strict probation. The fallout was intense. Tyler's father threatened lawsuits, claimed discrimination against athletes, and pulled his donations to the school. Connor's family made similar threats. Local news picked up the story, turning it into a debate about school discipline, due process, and the rights of accused students. Maya tried to stay out of the media spotlight, but it was impossible. Her name appeared in articles, though usually anonymized as the student who reported the harassment. Still, everyone in town knew who she was. She received hate mail and support letters in equal measure. Her parents hired a lawyer of their own, both to protect her rights and to shield her from the worst of the attention. Through it all, Maya kept going to school, kept taking notes, kept participating in debate club. She refused to hide or apologize. But the emotional toll was enormous. She had nightmares about being pushed downstairs, about her wheelchair breaking, about being abandoned in empty hallways. She started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patricia Williams, who specialized in trauma and disability issues. "You did a brave thing," Dr. Williams told her during one session. "But brave doesn't mean easy, and it doesn't mean painless. You're allowed to feel scared, angry, or hurt." Maya nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I just wanted to go to school without being afraid." "How did it get this big?" Dr. Williams smiled gently. "Because sometimes one person's courage gives others permission to speak up too. You started something, Maya. You might not have intended to, but you did. And that's powerful." As spring arrived and the school year wound toward its end, changes became visible. The administration implemented new anti-bullying protocols, including anonymous reporting systems and mandatory training for all staff. Accessibility improvements continued, with ramps being added to previously inaccessible areas and automatic door openers being installed throughout the campus. More significantly, the social atmosphere shifted. The unchallenged power that certain students had enjoyed began to crack. Other students felt more comfortable reporting problems, and teachers seemed more willing to intervene in situations they'd previously overlooked. But Maya knew the fight wasn't over. Tyler and Connor were gone, but the attitudes that had enabled their behavior remained. Some students still whispered about her when she passed, still questioned whether she'd overreacted, still believed the rumors that painted her as vindictive or manipulative. One afternoon in May, Maya was leaving the library when she encountered Ashton Park in the hallway. He'd been avoiding her all semester, which she appreciated. But today he stopped, blocking her path. "I need to say something," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Maya tensed, ready for another confrontation. "What?" Ashton looked down at his shoes, then back at her. "I'm sorry. For everything. For going along with Tyler, for not stopping him, for being a coward." Maya studied his face, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity. She found only shame. "Why tell me now?" she asked. "Because I've been in counseling, like the school ordered, and my therapist made me realize something. I was so afraid of being a target myself that I became part of the problem. I watched Tyler hurt people hurt you and did nothing because it was easier. That makes me almost as bad as him." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Not quite forgiveness, but something adjacent to it. Understanding, maybe. "What are you going to do about it?" Ashton straightened his shoulders. "I'm speaking at the next school board meeting. About what really went on here, about the culture that let Tyler get away with things for so long. I can't fix what happened, but maybe I can help make sure it doesn't happen again." They talked for another 20 minutes, sitting in the hallway as other students passed. Ashton shared things Maya hadn't known: how Tyler had bullied him too in subtle ways, how the whole friendship had been built on fear and social climbing, how he'd felt trapped in a role he didn't want to play. When they parted, Maya didn't tell him she forgave him. She wasn't ready for that yet, and maybe never would be. But she told him she appreciated his honesty, and that mattered too. The school year ended with a surprising development. At the final assembly, Principal Morrison announced that Maya Chun had been selected to receive the Principal's Award for Courage and Leadership. The auditorium erupted in applause, not universal, but substantial. As Maya wheeled onto the stage to accept the plaque, she looked out at the sea of faces. Some hostile, some supportive, most simply curious. She hadn't prepared a speech, hadn't expected this moment. But standing there under the bright lights, she felt something she'd been searching for all year. Validation. Not because she'd won some award, but because she'd refused to be silent. Because she'd demanded to be treated with basic human dignity. Because she'd shown other students that speaking up was possible. "Thank you," she said into the microphone, her voice steady. "I don't feel particularly courageous or like a leader. I just feel like someone who got tired of being pushed around and decided to push back. If that inspires anyone else to stand up for themselves or others, then maybe this year wasn't as terrible as it felt." The summer that followed was quieter. Maya worked with a local disability rights organization, sharing her story at workshops and youth conferences. She testified before the State Education Committee about the need for stronger, anti-bullying policies that specifically addressed disability-based harassment. She even started a blog, writing about her experiences and the broader issues facing disabled students in mainstream schools. The responses were overwhelming, hundreds of messages from students across the country who'd experienced similar situations. Parents who didn't know how to help their children, educators who wanted to do better. Maya realized her voice had reached beyond Riverside High, that her story had become part of a larger conversation. When junior year started in the fall, the atmosphere at school was noticeably different. New students filled the spaces left by Tyler and Connor. New teachers had been hired, including a vice principal specifically focused on student welfare and inclusion. Maya still used her wheelchair, still faced daily challenges, still encountered ignorance and occasional cruelty. But she no longer faced them alone. The alliance that had formed around her had evolved into an official club, Students for Equity and Inclusion. They met weekly, discussed issues, organized awareness campaigns, and supported students who were struggling. Maya served as co-president alongside Alyssa Rodriguez, who'd graduated, but returned as a community volunteer. One October afternoon, Maya was working in the school's newly renovated accessible garden, one of the improvements that had come from the accessibility audit. Jasmine and David were helping her plant flowers, their conversation easy and comfortable. "You ever regret it?" David asked suddenly. "Starting all this?" Maya paused, her hands in the dirt, considering the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "When I couldn't sleep because of the nightmares, or when I'd get another hateful message, or when my parents were stressed about legal bills. Yeah, I regretted it. But mostly?" She looked around at the garden, at the school building with its new ramps and wider doorways, at the students passing by who smiled and waved instead of looking away. "Mostly I'm glad I didn't stay silent. Because silence protects the wrong people. It protects the bullies, the administrators who don't want to deal with problems, the students who are afraid to get involved. Silence never protects the victim." Jasmine nodded, wiping dirt from her hands. "You changed this place, Maya. Not just the physical stuff, but the whole culture. People actually think twice before being cruel now. That's huge." As they worked, Maya reflected on everything that had happened. The fear, the anger, the isolation, the moments when she'd almost given up. But also the unexpected allies, the small victories, the discovery of her own strength. She thought about Tyler and Connor, expelled and facing uncertain futures. She didn't take pleasure in their consequences, but she didn't feel guilty either. They'd made choices, repeatedly, deliberately, to harm others. The fact that those choices finally had consequences wasn't her fault. It was justice. Imperfect and delayed, but justice nonetheless. She thought about Ashton, who'd spoken at that school board meeting and was now working with a youth mentorship program, trying to help younger students avoid the mistakes he'd made. Redemption was possible, she'd learned, but it required genuine change, not just empty apologies. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maya finished planting the last flower, a bright yellow chrysanthemum that would bloom through the fall. She sat back in her wheelchair, admiring their work, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not the peace of having no problems, but the peace of knowing she could face them. Not the peace of being liked by everyone, but the peace of respecting herself. Not the peace of a perfect world, but the peace of having fought to make her corner of it a little better. "Hey, Maya," a voice called out. She turned to see Emily, the quiet girl whose brother had autism, wheeling toward them. Behind her was her brother, a sweet-faced kid named Noah, who was starting as a freshman. Noah wanted to say hi. He's been nervous about starting high school, but I told him about you, about the club, about how things are different now. Maya smiled at Noah, who was clutching a backpack and looking overwhelmed. "Hey, Noah, welcome to Riverside. If you ever need anything, or if anyone gives you trouble, you come find me or any of us, okay? You don't have to face anything alone." Noah's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Thank you. My sister said you're really brave." Maya laughed softly. "I don't know about brave. Stubborn, maybe. Tired of accepting things that aren't right. But I'll take it." As Emma and Noah walked away, heading toward the parking lot, David grinned. "See? You're basically a superhero now. Wheelchair warrior. Defender of the downtrodden." Maya rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her smile. "That's the worst superhero name ever." "Fine, fine. How about the Enforcer? The Equalizer? Wheels of Justice?" Jasmine laughed. "Stop before you hurt yourself." They packed up the gardening supplies and headed toward the exit together, their shadows long in the fading light. Maya paused at the top of the ramp, one of the new ones, wide and smooth and safe, and looked back at the school building. For so long, it had felt like enemy territory, a place where she had to constantly defend her right to exist. Now it felt different. Not perfect, not easy, but possible. She'd learned that fighting back didn't always mean confrontation or violence. Sometimes it meant documentation and persistence. Sometimes it meant finding allies and building coalitions. Sometimes it meant using the law as a shield and a sword, demanding the rights that were supposedly guaranteed, but so often denied. She'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. That justice was something you had to create, not something that simply appeared. That change was possible but rarely comfortable, and that the people who benefited from the status quo would always resist its alteration. Most importantly, she'd learned that her disability didn't define her, but it was part of her story, her identity, her perspective. And that perspective had value. Her experiences had taught her things that others needed to learn about accessibility, about inclusion, about the casual cruelties that became normalized when they went unchallenged. As darkness fell and the parking lot emptied, Maya's mother pulled up in the van. Maya waved goodbye to Jasmine and David, loaded herself in, and headed home. That night, before bed, Maya opened her laptop and started writing. Not an assignment, not a blog post, but something more personal. A letter to her younger self, the girl who'd been afraid to speak up, who'd thought that staying invisible was the safest strategy. "Dear past Maya," she typed, "I know you're scared. I know every day feels like walking through a minefield where one wrong step could blow up your whole world. I know you lie awake at night replaying conversations, wondering if you should have said something different, done something different, been someone different. I want to tell you that it gets better, but that's not quite true. What's true is that you get stronger. You learn that silence isn't safety, it's slow suffocation. You learn that standing up for yourself might make things harder in the short term, but living as a victim makes them harder forever. You're going to face people who see your wheelchair before they see you, who think your disability makes you less capable, less worthy, less human. Some will be overtly cruel, others will be patronizing, and some will simply ignore you entirely. All of it will hurt, but you'll also find people who see you really see you, who recognize your strength, your intelligence, your humanity. Hold on to those people. They're rare and precious. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to trust the wrong people sometimes, doubt yourself often, and wonder if fighting is worth it. There will be days when you want to give up, to accept the limitations others try to impose, to stop making waves. Don't. The world doesn't need another person who stays quiet to keep others comfortable. It needs people who speak truth, who demand better, who refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. Your disability isn't your fault, but it's not something to be ashamed of either. It's part of you, and it gives you a perspective others lack. Use it. Learn everything you can about accessibility law, disability rights, the power of documentation. Knowledge is armor in a world that often tries to disarm you. Most importantly, know that you deserve to take up space, to have opinions, to demand respect, to exist without constantly apologizing for the inconvenience of your existence. You are not a burden. You are not inspirational, simply for getting through the day. You are a complete, complex person who happens to navigate the world differently than others. That difference has value. I won't lie and say everything works out perfectly. There are scars, physical and emotional, that you'll carry. There are relationships that won't survive, dreams that will need adjustment, fights you'll lose. But there are also victories you can't imagine yet. Moments when you'll realize you changed something, helped someone, made a difference. And those moments make the hard parts worth it. So when you're sitting in that hallway, blocked by bullies who think their cruelty is consequence-free, remember, they're wrong. When teachers look away, when administrators prioritize calm over justice, when other students choose comfort over courage, they're all wrong. You have power. Maybe not the kind that comes from physical strength or social status, but power nonetheless. The power to document, to organize, to speak truth to power, to refuse to accept unacceptable treatment. Use it. And know that future you is proud of the person you're becoming. Love, present Maya. She saved the document, closed her laptop, and looked out her bedroom window at the stars scattered across the dark sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. It always did. There would be inaccessible buildings to navigate, ignorant comments to endure, systems to fight, battles to choose. But tonight she felt ready. The journey from victim to survivor to advocate hadn't been linear or easy. There had been setbacks and failures, moments of doubt and despair. But each step forward, no matter how small, had built something larger. A life that was hers. A voice that mattered. A future she was actively creating rather than passively accepting. Maya thought about all the disabled students who'd come before her, who'd fought for the laws and accommodations she now relied on. She thought about the ones who'd come after, who would benefit from the changes she'd helped bring about. This was bigger than one girl, one school, one town. This was about the slow, difficult work of making the world more just, more accessible, more humane. As she drifted toward sleep, Maya's last thoughts were not of the bullies who'd tried to break her, but of the people who'd stood beside her. Jasmine and David, who'd never wavered. Alyssa and Marcus, who'd turned bystanders into allies. Dr. Williams, who'd helped her process trauma. Her parents, imperfect but loving, who'd given her the foundation to stand firm. Even Ashton, who'd shown that redemption was possible for those willing to do the work. And she thought of Noah, the freshman who'd looked at her with hope, who'd seen not a victim but someone who'd fought and won. That look was why the struggle mattered. Not just for herself, but for everyone who came after. In the morning, Maya would wake up and do it all again. Push her wheelchair through doors that weren't quite wide enough. Navigate social situations that required constant translation. Advocate for herself and others in a world that often forgot or ignored disability. But she'd do it with her head high, her voice clear, her spine straight. Because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Silence might be easier, but it's never truly safe. Speaking up might bring consequences, but those consequences were worth bearing. And changing the world, even just a small corner of it, required the courage to be uncomfortable. To be difficult, to be undeniably, unapologetically yourself. The first snowfall of winter arrived in December, transforming Riverside High into something almost magical. Maya paused near the main entrance, watching the flakes drift down, each one unique and temporary and beautiful. Students rushed past, chattering about holiday plans and upcoming exams. The energy was different now, lighter somehow, despite the academic pressure. Principal Morrison had just announced that Riverside had been selected as a model school for disability inclusion, chosen to present at a national education conference about the changes implemented over the past year. Maya had been asked to be part of the presentation, to share her perspective. She'd agreed, though the thought of speaking to hundreds of educators made her stomach twist. Ready for the student council meeting? David appeared beside her, brushing snow from his jacket. They'd both been elected to student council, David as treasurer, Maya as the first ever inclusion liaison. A position created specifically to ensure disabled students' voices were heard in school decision-making. As ready as I'll ever be, Maya replied, pushing forward into the warmth of the building. The meeting was productive but long, covering budget allocations for spring activities, plans for inclusive social events, and proposals for additional accessibility improvements. Maya presented a request for more accessible seating at sporting events and better captioning for school announcements. Both passed unanimously. Afterward, as students dispersed, Alyssa caught up with Maya in the hallway. Got a minute? There's someone I want you to meet. She led Maya to a quiet corner where a woman in her 30s waited, professional but warm. Maya, this is Jennifer Martinez. She's a lawyer who specializes in disability rights, and she's been following your story. Jennifer extended her hand, which Maya shook. It's an honor to meet you, Maya. What you've accomplished here is remarkable. I work with an organization that's been documenting successful student advocacy cases, and we'd love to include yours. They talked for 30 minutes. Jennifer explaining how Maya's case had already influenced policy discussions in the state legislature. Bills were being proposed to strengthen protections for disabled students, to mandate better training for teachers and administrators, to create clearer reporting procedures for disability-based harassment. Your courage started a ripple that's becoming a wave, Jennifer said. We're seeing students in other districts citing what happened here as inspiration for their own advocacy. You've given people hope that change is possible.